Well, hello, you lovely creative people. Matt here with Gear Sounds, and we're going to cover every single function of Fender Studio. Let's get started. Here we are zooming into the tracks by pressing two fingers and going outwards. You can see that on the screen there. And we can make these tracks taller by zooming vertically like this. Dragging our fingers up and down will make those smaller or bigger, any size we want. We can get them really small, whatever. But at a certain point, you can see the M and the S disappear. So what is that over here? Let's take a look. See how we got M and S on every single track? Those are mute and solo for each and every track. Now, if you hit the mute button, that track just won't play. If you hit the solo button, only that track will play. Let's take a listen. So right now I have these two tracks, right? If I hit mute, if I hit mute here, only my guitar solo will play. Oh, that's another thing. So you hear that crackling sound? Let's go ahead and fix that crackling sound. So I heard some people complaining about this. Under audio setup, we're going to have to adjust the samples to 768. When you're listening, you want big blocks so that the computer can process everything in big blocks. When you're recording, you want small blocks for low latency. You can just remember small blocks, fast. Big blocks, detailed, right? Like a detailed painting. So the small blocks are going to be good for small chunks for low latency for recording. So when you're recording, 96 samples, and when you're listening, 768 samples. The app defaults to 384 just so that it doesn't confuse people, but I want you to do the right way. Okay, so we're going to listen. So we're going to put it at 768. Now we're ready to listen. Okay, so we have the guitar rhythm track muted. Let's listen to just the solo track by itself. There it goes. Right? And we can hear just the guitar solo track. Now if I were to unmute the backing track, now we hear both. Now, we understand what the M and the S means. We can do that with any tracks as a way to kind of isolate what we're working on. What if we want to start recording? So the first thing we want to look at is see how you see the 65, 33, these little numbers up here? I'm actually touching inside of that bar to adjust where the playhead goes. If I touch here, nothing happens. I got to touch in that bar. This little gray bar is a limiting function. So let's say I want to record a little section and then I want the recording to stop. I can set that. Now for this function to work, you actually need to click the little loop icon at the bottom right-hand corner. For now, I'm just going to widen that out because we don't need it. Okay, let's look at the recording function. So, one other thing I saw people were confused about is why can't I hear my guitar effects when I am playing over the loop? That is because you did not hit this little button here. This little button here is how you hear your effects. So if I press this, I will be able to listen to my voice, for instance. So when I click that and then I click this, we're going to get feedback. I'm going to turn that off, otherwise it's going to squeal your ears broken. We're getting feedback because I marked that recording. I'm going to turn this off. Remember, this is the live monitoring button, guys. This is the key. That's going to allow you to hear yourself in real time. If you're not wearing headphones, pressing that button is a waste of time because it's just going to feed back on you. Okay, so let's get rid of this. And let's arm this vocal... Oh, let me turn that back off. Let's arm this vocal track for recording. So you can see the vocal track is dancing right now because it's actually recording from my phone. Now, these recording buttons can be armed or unarmed. So when I press red, every single track that's red is going to record when I hit the record button at the bottom of the screen. That means the track is essentially armed for recording. Watch the bar dancing to know you're getting audio. And that's how you can tell, hey, I'm getting audio. Like for the guitar, I shouldn't be getting audio, so I know it's coming through the microphone, right? And so when I arm that for recording, if I hit the record button, it's going to count down from 4, and then it's going to start recording. Let me mute these other tracks so that we can do a quick little recording here. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then we're going to zoom in by scrolling, and then let's say I want to apply effects on that vocal, right? First thing we're going to do is double tap the vocal track. Okay, now you can see the name of the track, the icon. We can change this to whatever we want. We can change the color. I changed it to yellow. The input is going to depend on what you're using. Right now, I'm just using the phone. If you're using the Fender I/O, it's going to be listed here. You can select that. For the effects, we have 3 different banks of effects. We can choose from voice effects, guitar effects, or bass effects. Since this is a voice track, we're going to use voice effects. I'll show you guitar effects in the next section. In the effects, for voice effects, we only have these different voice effects. What's great though is that you can alter them just like a real effect right here. And then you turn it on and off using this little button right there. That blue button is going to tell you it's either on or it's off. So make sure you keep an eye on that. You can reduce crackling and popping by just turning off what you're not using. If you're not using the effects, turn it off. If you're not using the compressor and EQ, press the button and turn it off. Okay, so the effects section is pretty self-explanatory. We're going to go in all the vocal effects in another episode. For now, I'm just showing you where everything is and how to get to it and how it works. So for the vocoder, it's going to be kind of like a weird Daft Punk kind of sound. Ring modulation sounds awful, but it's like crunchy to your voice. Transformer, another interesting thing like detuner. These are all, I don't like voice effects, but if you do, that's where they're at. Now compression, EQ. This is super important. This is very important, especially for vocals. If you're not a sound engineer, don't worry. I'm going to make this very easy for you. Compression is essentially taking all of your quietest sounds and making them louder, and all of your loudest sounds and making them quieter. So it's compressing the dynamic range of your sound. What is dynamic range? It's the distance between your quietest and your loudest sound. It crunches, it compresses the dynamic range. So your dynamic range is compressed. So what does compression do? It compresses your dynamic range. What is dynamic range? Distance between the quietest and the loudest sound. Let's take a listen. Also, I'm going to hit S for solo so that we can, and you see how it turns on M on the other ones automatically? I had an issue where I kept hitting solo and it automatically just mutes the other tracks when you hit solo. I don't think it should do that because hitting solo is muting the other tracks, essentially. But it's trying to make it easy for you, so. Testing. So we're listening. Let's go to audio setup. Let's set the block size to maximum. It's already at the maximum. So we're probably hearing crackling just because we're at the maximum of what my device can handle, which is fine. So let's take a listen. Oh, we have a voice effect on the detuner, that's why. Okay, let's turn off the detuner, go to the compression, and let's listen to that again. Testing, 1, 2, 3. So if I turn up the compression. 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. You can hear it's bringing up the quietness of that vocal. What is expansion? Expansion is essentially the opposite of compression. It's going to expand your dynamic range, which means it's going to make quiet parts quieter and louder parts louder. Testing, 1, 2, 3. You can hear it made it quieter there. Now you're seeing this little dot right here. This little icon is going to light up just like a real compressor in real life. When you have a compressor, it's actually going to kind of light up based on when the signal is hitting the compressor. Now, unfortunately, this compressor doesn't have a threshold, meaning we don't know when it's actually hitting the compressor in terms of the actual value. But we can see that little light, and when that light's coming on, it means the compressor is doing its thing. And so keep an eye, and you can see that light going. Watch when we get back here. Watch the light, the little compression light. Testing. See how it's lighting up? That's telling you when it's making its expansion, or compression. Let's turn off the expansion. And the speed just tells you how quickly it's going to re-engage. If I put it to slow, it's going to kind of wobble around a little bit. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Actually, it didn't even engage that time. So testing, 1, 2, 3. Still not engaging. I think we have to expand it a little bit. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Bring down the speed a little bit. There we go. 1, 2, 3. There we go. So do you see how when the light comes on? 1, 2, 3. It took me a little bit of adjustment to get that light to come on. What does that mean? It means I wasn't actually utilizing the effect, or it wasn't activating. So when that light's coming on, it's telling you it's either expanding or it's compressing, or it's doing both. Expansion and compression at the same time is essentially going to 1, 2. Change how the dynamics sound. Again, dynamics are differences in volume. So that's the compression section. The presets offer not, I think it's, it looks like the presets also have a compression setting. But the EQ setting, unless you're a sound engineer like myself or a producer, and you have your own EQ for what you like to do, I would actually go with these presets. Because as a producer and a sound engineer, I went through them and I looked at them, and they're not really that bad. Other than this, massive shelf that they're putting on this EQ, which I personally wouldn't do that. So if you want to open up these menus, you can just double tap. So if I tap any of these, that includes the previous menu. So let me go back to the effects menu. If I double tap this, oh, on the voice effects, I actually can't open this larger. Yeah, it doesn't look like I can. But on the compression, I can double tap and it'll open this menu up larger. Now, when I open this up larger, you can see the compression menu has fully opened up. And so this compression, or sorry, the EQ menu has fully opened up. The compression menu is still the same, but all of these different EQ options have opened up. So this was what I was talking about that I didn't like, this low cut shelf. There's a lot of sound engineers that think that a low cut and a high cut and you're done. And I've never been one of those people. I do low cut and I do high cut a lot, just like you should, because those frequencies are outside the hearing range of the human ear. But I tend to leave a lot more in than most producers, just because it's my personal preference. I like how it sounds. It gives a little more fullness to the sound. You got to be careful though, because if you have a lot of tracks, that bass can cumulatively add up. And when I was a newer producer, that would happen a lot. For me, I like a nice little M curve personally, but this is not bad either. I would actually have this go back and have a high shelf coming back, but they don't have a high shelf option. But you can kind of imitate one using this one right here. So there's a high dot. See how I did a high shelf right there? There's a low dot, and you see it won't let me go past the middle with the low dot, and it won't let me go past the middle. It won't even let me go past 2K with this high dot. And then there's a middle dot that can go everywhere. And so this is essentially how you shape. You're using these three to kind of shape, right? This one can go, almost anywhere. And so that allows you to kind of curve the way that you want to. I still can't really get what I'd like because I need a fifth point to get the kind of shape that I like. But still, for a phone application, this is incredible. This is enough shaping for what I'm going to do. It's just not something that I would, use as a professional producer, but of course not. It's a phone app. That being said, you could absolutely do a professional production on this app if it was limited and if the phone was powerful enough. One thing that I want you to keep in mind is if you're using an Android phone, there's a function that you can get extra processing power out of your phone by swiping down here, going into the menu, and then see this processing speed button right here. Tap on that, and you're going to see maximum. Now, when I hit back, it actually gets another menu. Check this out. Optimize now, right? I'm going to optimize, and my background apps are going to close. And it's going to check for anything that may get in the way of high processing applications, typically for gaming or for something like this. Okay, we were right in the compression EQ section. Okay, so I turn that on whenever I start recording, by the way. Even if I'm going to listen to a recording or if I'm going to work a track here, I turn that on just so that it gives my phone extra processing power. And I have a Galaxy S22 Ultra, probably a little bit sluggish for this task, but if you're just doing backing track and then guitar solo, it's totally fine. So, compression and EQ can be turned off with this button here. You can see everything turns off. I can turn off the low cut by just touching here. But then I don't like that because then it only gives me 3 dots, which, like I said, I'm a 5-dot EQ kind of guy. But 4 dots is fine. Like I said, it's mostly fine. So you also have the presets for the EQ here. Like I said, I like electric guitar. It does pretty well except for this low cut. I would actually choose this setting, pull back, and then take the compression and adjust based on your guitar. Because remember, this little light is going to light up based on how much you're hitting that compressor. So if you're hitting it too much, bring it down. You're not hitting it at all, bring it up, etc. And then, of course, you can use expansion to your own personal taste. Although there is a different way that I like to expand. Personally speaking, I like the normalize function for expansion. It tends to be more clean. How do we do the normalize function? Well, let's take a look. Let's say I wanted to do an expansion on this portion of the solo right here. I can click on this, and I can click on the little waveform at the top right-hand corner. See this little squiggly line up here? Let me circle it for you guys so you can see this. See this right here? Right there. That little squiggly line is the Waveform Editor. Now, the Waveform Editor on the phone is obviously not going to be very in-depth, but it's pretty good. I love this little, in the normalize section, here it is. Under volume, you see this normalize? Watch this. One tap. Boom. It gives me a nice perfect level as a sound engineer. I'm looking at that waveform. It's chef's kiss. Beautiful. As a sound engineer, and you are officially a producer, once you get into this app and you're looking at waveforms, congratulations. You're a baby sound engineer. You're a baby producer. I started producing more than 22 years ago. And it's a lot of fun, but it's very technical, and it's something that you really have to pay attention to. Now, thanks to the Fender app, a lot of this is automated. You don't have to worry about clipping for the most part. What is clipping? When the audio gets too loud, it'll touch the top and it'll flatten out and it'll clip, and that loses information. Take a look. I can actually make this go too loud by clicking this little white, or this little, what's it called? This little blue dot here. And I'm adjusting volume here in this volume menu. I can fade by bringing these fades in like this. You can see the volume changing in real time. I can fade this way. I can cut the track, right? And let me put this back to normal. And the bend function is essentially dynamically doing all of that. So I can speed things up, I can transpose. Now for the transpose function, that's actually in the mix section. So let's get to this section a little bit later, although I think we've mostly covered it. So let's finish it. Normalize, we covered that. We can undo that. I can adjust the gain. We can do fades. I can set them I like setting it like this, but you can set it there if you want to. Bend is going to be sort of like a dynamic transpose, and a transpose is changing the key of the song. And you can kind of move that and then move it back if you want to. Like, let's say you wanted to have a key change in the song, you could probably use that here. That would work. In the edit section, you can do different split functions. Now, these are very basic, so we're not going to get too deep into that, but that really covers the waveform section. Any questions on that, feel free to ask, guys. I had no idea this video was going to be so long, but there's actually a lot of functionality in the app, so I'm pretty happy with that. Now it's time for the mix section. When we click each track, it has its own mix section. Take a look. It's changing between tracks, because we're essentially looking at a piece of the mixer, but with an additional delay and reverb knob. So you see, we have the volume, the mute, the solo, and we have the panning left and right, that little blue line right there, as well as a delay and reverb for each individual track. So that is separate to the guitar effects and the vocal effects. That is a dedicated reverb and delay for each track that's completely separate from the effects, and that's in the mix section. Very cool secret delay and reverb, so you can get a ton of extra reverb if you want. Here's the key, though. At the bottom right-hand corner, this little main button, you have track effects for the entire mix. So you can apply a third reverb. You can have guitar reverb, you can have reverb on the track, and then you can have reverb on the entire mix for 3 total reverbs and delays. And the reverb and delay in the mix. Now remember, this is the main section, so this reverb and delay is different, right? This is the delay and reverb for everything. I have more fine-tuned controls, more than any other reverb. I actually like this reverb even better than the one in the guitar. Gets bigger, which is nice. And then, of course, you have your presets, which are nice. Very nice presets. And then, in the mix section, you have a limiter as well. Now, a limiter is kind of like a compressor that only works at the top section. So, it's not going to make the quieter sounds louder. It's only going to make your louder sounds that are hitting a specific limit quieter, so that you don't clip. Great for vocals. So, yeah, very confusing little section, but I hope that clears that up.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
You can hear that's adding the reverb to the vocals.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
And it's adding delay as well. Now, last, and certainly not least, is going to be the guitar effects section. So when we go to the guitar, we can see this has track, we have effects, comp and EQ, and mix, just like the last one. Now, one thing I didn't mention on the mix that appears here, there's a little mixing thing right up here at the top right-hand corner. If you touch this here, you're going to get to this mixer where you can see all the tracks in a different way, and you're probably thinking, but I already have all those buttons up at the top left. Yes, but there's one new one. This is the panning functionality. This allows you to pan left and right. I mean, this is a full DAW. It's a full digital audio workstation. I'm pretty happy with this. I was trying to just get that centered. Not that it matters. My old sensibilities are coming back. Okay, so.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Now, the guitar effects. So see this effects section? Everything works off of these presets, just like the compressor did, we can go through these presets here. And you can see I have some reuser presets. Here's some factory presets. When I click these presets, you're going to see the pedal board down below is changing in real time. These are some of mine that are pretty fun. This one has a ton of effects. And when we come in here, if we double tap this, it opens up this menu. And you see the add block button at the bottom. And you've got a tuner up there. Input and output is here. So this allows you to hit your pedals at the correct levels. Now, for those who don't understand input and output, that is an entirely different video. But essentially, you want to get to a certain level. I haven't seen how this measures you, but you want to be between, I'd say, -9 and -6 dB when you're peaking. That's a great level to be at your highest peak. Some people say -12. To me, that's a little conservative. I like a little warmer of a signal, personally speaking. So that's going to allow you to take a look at that. Now, tuner's there. These are your effects, which you can drag. I can take this and I can swap it here. Click, swap. I can hit the add button here. And I can add and choose one of the pedals. There's only 4 pedals right now. I'm going to get more pedals by doing the sign up. I believe that's going to have to be another video because I think you can get more of these by signing up with some account. So let's say I want that. Let's hit confirm. And it's big right now, but if I want to go back to the small vision, I can double tap and it goes back to the small vision. And there I can see all the pedals again. And as far as I can tell, there's really no limit to the pedals, but with only 4 pedals, that's kind of the limit. You can tap a pedal to get more detailed. You can slide through the pedals to get to the different pedals. Like here's the gain on the amp. I love how these look. The knobs look so good. These are some of the best looking knobs I've ever seen on a fake guitar amp. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the effects section. So when it comes to all of these effects, you're going to want to make sure that you're utilizing the audio setup that I mentioned earlier. So the audio setup for utilizing effects and playing them in real time is going to be 96 samples. On the side of your Fender I/O device, you should see a knob that'll adjust how much you're hearing your unaltered guitar signal and how much you're hearing your altered guitar signal. Now, if you're using my 96 samples trick, like you should be, you won't really need to use that as much, although I recommend using it if it's a highly processed effects chain. You'll definitely want to. So some of these other menu options, let's take a look. We can import a file. We can export our session. We can set the ruler format to seconds instead of bars. Continuous scrolling just means that the little playhead, as it's going by, if it reaches the end, it's going to scroll your view, so you'll continuously see it. Snap means kind of things magnetize and stick together. Arranger track, when I turn this on, and I come up here at the top, you're going to see when I add section, it's going to add an intro, and then when I go further and then I add a section, it's going to add a verse, and then I can stretch these out and make them as long as I want. Just kind of as a label, right? You can see down at the bottom right-hand corner, when I hit the 3 dots, we've got our metronome functionality. We can turn that on here. And I believe there was a place to adjust the volume. I don't see where that is right here. You can transpose the entire track up and down a few semitones if you want to, for whatever reason. You can change the BPM. And because all of those global settings are defaulted, you can actually alter the BPM and it's going to stretch your track in real time and it's not going to affect anything. Take a look. Oh, wait, no, this is the volume for the metronome. There it is. So here's the tap tempo. Take a look. When I adjust this, if I pull this tap tempo forward, it's actually going to squeeze the track. So watch. When I hit the BPM, see the track squeezing? And it'll increase the speed of the track. So that's really the basics of the app. Actually, really not the basics. That's everything in the app currently. Whenever they go through any new updates, I am certainly going to update you guys. You can see at the bottom, you can go back to the beginning, you can play, you can record. This little chain link icon. Okay, I actually just discovered what this is for here. This little bottom button at this is so funny. Remember how I was telling you guys that these little gray bars right here are supposed to loop between that section because that's what they typically do? It turns out you need to press this button for that to work. This little loop button right here. Pressing that button will actually cause the loop function to just turn on and work, which I think is Kind of interesting. I actually kind of like that. I don't like it because it doesn't work like anything I'm used to, but I like it because then the loop won't annoy me. I'm constantly getting annoyed by loops in video editors too. So yeah, there you go. That's going to do it, guys. That pretty much covers everything inside of Fender Studio. I had no idea this was going to be a 30-minute video, but yeah, there it is. If you guys enjoyed, if you got something out of it, drop a like and definitely subscribe if I taught you something. And I will see you guys in next week's video on Sunday morning. Bye-bye for now.
Hey guys, it's Bob. I just want you to know, do not subscribe to this guy. Do not watch his videos. Definitely do not click on another video because he doesn't use a tube screen. He leaves me underneath the bed, guys. I'm under a bed. Before this video, I was in a bed. And he just took me out to take pictures of me just to humiliate me. Don't subscribe.